Call this meeting to order. It's Wednesday, September 6, 2023. We are hearing from HMH and the Murray Water Association to discuss the potential use of county properties for wells. So who wants to take that over and lead it?
Sorry, I'm late.
Okay.
You're fine. Jim, you're probably the best to run this, really.
Yeah, I can
Should we
give
do
a background.
Do you want to do intros
And your
real quick?
intros, Jim?
Yeah, I'm with
you could
Department of Environmental Quality
Yes,
Drinking Water Program. I'm Jim Williamson.
Okay.
And I work with Murray Water System.
Okay.
And essentially, the department regulates the water system. We inspect them. So our work goes back to some of the more recent findings goes back to about 2015. So we've really been working for a number of years on some deficiencies that the water system has. And essentially, as part of our evaluation, we look at reliability. We have some specific numbers that indicate that reliability. And one of the issues that Murray Water System has is they don't have enough source capacity. They run out of water, they depressurize. That is a public health threat. It's also a limitation on the amount of water that people can use. So the water system is not in compliance with the department's requirements. And so we have been working with them over the past 8 years or so at least to try to improve their infrastructure. They have done a lot of work to improve the amount of water that they use, but essentially we need more sources, more infrastructure. So some of the major work that has been done in the past 8 years is Murray Water Association, along with DEQ's grant money, has completed a facility plan, which is a comprehensive document that guides the water system on alternatives and identifies the best alternative and what those things are going to cost. So we have been through that phase. We are now in a funding phase where DEQ has provided about $735,000 to make improvements to the water system. Essentially, that's going to include the development of 2 new sources. We're going to drill 2 wells, and then we're going to have some additional piping to connect that to the existing system. And so essentially for that project to proceed, and I believe we have a couple year window to do that. HMH is the engineer. They're ready to proceed with design. However, the problem is their design is going to be very specific to the sites for the wells. We do not have any current sites right now that have been worked out where we can develop these wells. All of the engineering, the entire project, all of the funding, the $735,000 is dependent on finding these 2 well sites. If the well sites are not identified, if we cannot find a place to drill them, not only is the engineering not going to be able to proceed, there is a potential that that funding may not be utilized at all. Okay. And that would be a real tragedy. That's something that we at DEQ are working very hard with Murray Water and the engineers to identify sites. We've had a number of efforts to reach out to private owners that have lots that have been identified as potentially developable. We just need to finalize the negotiation. So far, those owners have not been able to offer their properties. We've had a public meeting a few weeks ago to try to inform the public of our project, where we are, and to solicit opportunities for people to offer their property to try and develop this. It's pretty critical. We've reached out to the community. One of the things that we've identified is there are a number of right-of-ways, areas that the county has control over. And so I guess as part of this process to try to identify where we can put these wells, we're approaching the county.
Okay.
So we brought a map that kind of shows the different parcels in Murray.
Are you guys offering the property owners some kind of a monetary amount, or
There is a
free
monetary
water?
amount, yeah. Our negotiations have started with who's even interested, who has the availability. DEQ does have some requirements for setbacks, and so we're just trying to identify people who we can begin that negotiations process for. But there is a budget for some sort of compensation, whether that be an easement or purchase or something of that nature.
Okay.
And let's talk about the physical attributes that would come with that well. So you're basically looking at maybe an 8-10 inch pipe sticking out of the ground, 18 inches out of the ground. It'll have a cap on it. And then you'll have a well house, and it could be a simple well house, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet. So it's not a lot of infrastructure. I mean, it's not a lot of pumps and.
Okay.
And ideally, with our rules, I'm Anna Moody. I manage our drinking water program in North Idaho. So,
Okay.
And thanks for your patience. I was a little late.
It's okay.
But ideally, it would meet those setback requirements that we have for sanitary setback, which is a minimum of 50 feet. Because of the necessity of finding drinking water, we would want to be as flexible and amenable to potentially not meeting that, but ideally we need to meet that at a minimum. Plus there are sanitary setbacks from septic. So that's also another consideration of potential lots in the area, because we want that protective zone around that hole in the ground that's sealed, but at the same time, there's always a potential for influence. So ideally, that setback is also met.
Okay.
So whether it's through managing it with like boulders or fencing or just, full control over that is ideal. And like Jim mentioned, that's been through sometimes lease agreements, not just only ownership of the property, but for the lifetime of the well, essentially like 99-year leases. So, because there are cities that have, contracts with like the state of Idaho on their properties, which is 99 years. So,
Okay.
Now
these well houses, like you said, they'd be 8 by 8, and then they'd have a fence around them, so they're not.
Ideally.
Okay. So
Yeah.
But they wouldn't
tamper-proof.
have to.
They don't have to.
Okay.
But for security, it's helpful. Also for management, so you're not piling snow on it, or
Okay.
people are driving on a well lot, or and their current well wasn't installed with approval. It doesn't meet setbacks, so they monitor it monthly just to make sure that it's safe. It's really close to a cesspool. So.
Okay.
In this process, ideally, what we would have is some sort of barrier around that at the 50-foot radius, but we recognize the challenges as well. So that's where we have alternative processes where we can approve waivers if we have an equivalent protection. So that's where it can be a case by case.
Okay.
Let's get creative about what that could look like. So yes, there's a standard, but we have an alternate that we could work if there's any offers of a property, or if it doesn't quite meet that. We have a process to try to work through that.
Okay.
And then if everybody looks at the map, you can see we've identified 3 parcels owned by the county. One is the shop. The other is the courthouse. And then there's that little rectangle next to the courthouse. I don't know why they're 2 different parcels, but they are.
Yeah.
The other thing to keep in mind is that the county does own a lot of right-of-way that currently isn't being used as roads and doesn't look like it ever will be. There's nothing that it would go to. For example, this one right here is a county owned. It's part of the right-of-way, of Pritchard Creek Street. And then this one right here is another one that really doesn't. So you got this one.
Yeah. That's this one here.
Yep. And then you got this one right here. That one.
Okay.
I mean, some of those, I wish we could pull up Google Earth, but if you were to look at it on Google Earth, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's never going to be a street. It doesn't go to anything. It never will go to anything.
And we can double check that through our roads department.
Yeah, so Jesse sent the map last week when we were working to get the meeting going, and I've been working with Rick, and that kind of open right of way to the south of the labeled parcels there, the ones on the right, that one looks like it would be a good candidate because currently, when you look at it, it's just filled with rock. There's just a bunch of rock piled there. Jesse's exactly right. We're not going to do anything with those little tail ends of right of way.
Okay.
We're not going to redevelop those streets. We're not going to allow them to be redeveloped any foreseeable future. So I think that one could be considered. We looked at the lot that's labeled the Murray Courthouse there.
Okay.
And I think that could be something explored as well because that butts up right next to the right of way. Again, is not going to be developed in any foreseeable future. I can't see any reason to even begin to try to open that up. If you go up there and look, you'll see logistically, what I'm talking about. So I think those would be two locations. We talked about the larger lot, which is currently the Murray shop. That one's a little harder, especially if we were just looking at like summertime all year round. We didn't have winter to contend with. They get such a large amount of snow. They do have their equipment moving in and out of there. They store a lot of their equipment there. I think logistically it would be hard to carve out dedicated space for that there. And then I wasn't sure, I don't know how it works, but there is another, the neighbor just to the west there across that open right of way does have a pump house there right at the south end of that right of way. So I don't know how close you can get.
Is this right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So they have a
So-
pump house. Yep. There's a pump house right there.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and
So it would be
this one here
right here.
Yeah.
is actually
For this home.
right away for around behind.
Actually, it
the
feeds
by the
this
shop.
home,
museum.
Oh,
So
this
it
home,
is
and that
being
home.
actively used.
okay.
And it's a really
So
good well.
It may be a
One of
road
the best
to
in
use
town.
itself.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Access behind.
Okay.
So there's like an aquifer or something runs through here.
Okay.
Here is better than here. This house here has standing water under the house year round.
Well, so this open area would be
On this side of the street, well, I mean, the engineers have to engineer and see if what I hear is right. But
I mean, ideally, we want to keep the two wells apart from each other,
Yeah.
so they're not competing with each other.
Yeah.
Um,
So what are you thinking on where would you start?
anywhere that we can get a place
Okay.
at this point, I think is where we'd like to start. If you guys can identify two lots, I mean, that would just save the
So-
town.
These two right-of-ways are too close together. Who would you prefer them? You want them
Potentially,
preferably
yeah.
separated a little bit further apart?
Right. Is there anything on the west end of town?
Wasn't the property on what? Wasn't there a...
There are two private
Two
parcels that have
privates,
have been identified, and both homeowners are reluctant to develop it.
Okay.
And there's some other logistical problems. One of them isn't clear on where his boundaries are, and the other actually has a current use that would be incompatible. He has septic drain fields on it.
now we do have one other option in the west end, right here. The only drawback is we don't know who owns this. If it was county right of way, this guy'd let us put a well back here. But I don't know if DEQ will let us put something that close
Kind of close.
behind the schoolhouse.
Oh, Gerald's?
Yeah.
Okay, there's
Like here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
we got Jerry Coleman, Dan Reeser, and Holly Henderson.
Is that between the schoolhouse and the main road? Oh,
There's
Darrell.
Darrell.
So
This would be county right away out here.
okay. So this is
Good thing.
county right away. So if we were to put some at the back of his property,
Mm-hmm.
County has a
So-
100-foot right of way.
so we had like 50 feet out in here,
Mhm.
Have we determined who controls that right of way?
I think that's what they're saying right
Yeah,
now is that
the
they
county.
control.
The county.
County controls
County
the
has a-
highway?
County has a 100-foot right of way from the center line out.
Okay.
I believe that's
How does that work,
right.
Jessica? Now, is this a regular road?
So
Yeah,
that
that's
one
Pritchard
is,
Creek
that's
Road.
Yeah.
Pritchard Creek Road, the road that leads you
Yeah.
to turn into Murray there.
Yeah.
And then you continue on to go over Thompson Pass. So that's like the main road up there.
So how would that flow in?
So,
How would that work?
so, I mean, we would be okay, like accessing, for maintenance purposes of the well. Would the access be off of Pritchard Creek Road or would the access be off of,
Thompson Pass.
through the,
Private yard?
through the private yard?
Yeah, it would be through the private yard, I would think.
Okay.
yeah,
Because logistically, there might be some issues. We'd want to look further if we needed to create an access off of the main road there. We would want to look at that. Because I hadn't looked at that portion as being an option. So I would want to explore that a little bit. But as far as like from our department and having objections, I don't see, any objections. That
he's the one person in town,
Yes.
the one that said,
Do it.
whatever I can do to help.
Okay.
And that would give us a well at this end, and that's
Yeah.
where I just said, he told me when I asked him, he goes, well, shoot, I think it'd be great, Steve. He goes, I got a sump pump running year round under the house. It's in the old schoolhouse.
Mhm.
But he said, yeah, you got water year round.
So then you put one
And then
here
if we
and
put one there
At each
and one here,
Okay.
because see here, this, I don't know where the septic is for this. That's Tony McGuire's place. But this, there is a shelter there with an RV and no septic. And he can't put septic there because there's a dredge pond right here.
And then back to the question about which side of the road, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but the indication of water doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to find the water we're trying to get. So if he's got a sump pump in his water, he's getting different water than the
Oh, I
drink.
understand, yeah.
And that water could be bad water that could negatively influence the well itself. So that side of the street might not be the best side.
Is
what
that
I'm getting
because, is this side of the street have contamination or?
No. It's just when you have a well, you typically go down deep because you're trying to get the groundwater that's been filtered out through the dirt and the sand naturally. And water that you typically find when you've got to put a sump pump in your basement is surface water that's, I wouldn't say it's been contaminated, but it's not something that you and I would want to drink.
Yeah, so it
we
could
don't want
pollute.
it going
coming down.
into the well.
Yep, okay.
But then again, right, let me see, right here and right here are two of the dredge ponds that have pretty clean water. And my understanding is used to be a whole series of ponds through here, but in time people have filled them in.
Okay.
There's only two remaining in town.
So one of our first steps in the engineering process, once we do have people that are committed to letting the association use lots, is we do a well site evaluation. So if you guys are considering both or one of these two, we would know during the evaluation process which one would be better.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that. Is it not being a use to the county anyways, as Jess said. So.
And same with the right of way. We have examples of systems that are utilizing like highway district right of ways, and it's still also a management agreement. It's kind of like a lease, that you give up that right of way and allow the water system to manage that other stuff back.
Now, this is gonna be a public water system?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is a public system. It has been a long time. I don't know if you know the history of the association,
Mhm.
but it was privately owned a number of years ago by Arlen Lish, and he made some improvements to the distribution. But then he was done with it, and a man named Kim Giddle purchased it, and the association formed on their own, which is a very big thing to do anyway, to purchase a water system, and they got a private loan and purchased it from Kim Giddle, and now as a non-for-profit system, but it's been a regulated public drinking water system for quite a long time, since the
And apparently was
Long
only
time.
supposed to
Yeah.
feed for,
Yeah, the
Or
well that we're
homes
feeding
or-
the town off of,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
story is it was only to feed 3 or 4 houses.
So it wasn't approved before it was put into service. I mean, it doesn't go way back from when it was the county seat. That's a long, long time ago, but
Yeah.
it's a system that's been in place for. They were on surface water years ago, and had storage tank.
Yeah,
Um,
up here,
but they didn't have
up on the
treatment.
side hill, you can still see the old water tanks, wooden water.
Yeah.
So basically what you're wanting from us today is permission to look at this one and this one to see if you can get water out, right?
And
Yes.
possibly down behind
And
us.
unless there's
And
anything
it's
else.
And
workable.
this area
In
here.
this area here?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so just to make sure, Rhodes, you'll look into the one that off the right of way, the 100-foot right of way,
Yes.
You'll look into
Yeah,
that a
I'll
little more?
confirm our
Okay.
right-of-way.
and then the other two are fine?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, those are our right of way. You look them up and, that's
okay,
what you did. So, yeah, we shouldn't have any concerns with that.
okay.
And I mean, it's pretty easy review for your attorney.
Yeah.
It's-
And that's what
we
we'll
go
do is
through
we'll,
this a
we'll
lot,
make
so.
sure that he is in agreement with us. So upon his advice to, we can, do you want to do a motion or?
Just deciding, okay, for the review of the
Yeah.
properties, so okay.
Well, wait,
Yeah.
before we get to that though, real quick.
Okay.
So a lot of time and money is going to get spent on doing the well site evaluation. So I guess don't just give us permission to evaluate whether these are good lots and then come back and tell us that you're not going to be able to do anything.
Okay, I
for
see what
us.
you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like, let's not spend the time and money
Yep.
looking at the lots until we know you guys are comfortable with.
Okay.
Why don't we get with legal
We'll get with legal.
and then
Yeah.
put it on our
We'll
agenda
get with
to
legal,
approve
and then
a
we'll get it on the agenda next week.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we'll. That's
Excellent.
Where's
what
your
we'll do.
cohort?
Had another appointment.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So we can go ahead and just table this until for further review until.
With legal, yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll get it going as soon as we get the okay.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Good news.
And if you want to come up and see everything firsthand, all you gotta do is give us a call.
We'll be happy to.
Yeah, we live in Murray year round, and we got a lot of time invested in this.
Okay.
And so, yeah, if you wanted to see for yourself firsthand, like here, the amount of space between this property and the road, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a lot.
There you go.
I mean, yeah, thanks, Rick. Yeah.
And I mean, for a feel-good thing, with these ARPA funds that our agency has, you guys have managed them. We have so much money in our state revolving loan fund,
Okay.
and it's been a long time that we've been able to do. We don't really do grants; it's principal forgiveness, but it's been a long time that the agency's been able to do that.
Okay.
So this is one of those legacy projects. When you also question when a town ceases to exist, it's when they can't have water.
That's right.
And there are times they've gone dry.
Let's not let that
So-
happen.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
We all
yeah.
want to get up there. We go up the river. We
Yeah.
enjoy that area.
And I wanted to mention too, piggybacking on Anna's comments, we have documented a decline in the source over time. So the do nothing alternative
Yeah.
essentially does not paint a bright future for the town.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get on it.
We'll get on it for next week.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Yeah.
This
Thank
is such
you.
good news. Goodness sakes.
Yeah.
We're on our way.
And I'll adjourn this
A long
meeting.
time coming.